So we are going to look at Java methods, or methods in Java. Okay, methods in Java. And now the first thing you need to know is what a method is. Okay, what a method is. So method is basically a block of code. Method is a block of code that is used to perform a specific task. Okay, used to perform a specific task. That is basically a method. It's you have a block of code and you write a block of code that is used to solve a particular problem or to perform a specific task. An example is, assume you want to calculate area of a rectangle. You know, the task is to calculate area of a rectangle. So you write a block of code that specifically calculates the area of a rectangle. Assume you want to measure maybe the distance moved by a person given the number of hours they have moved and the speed at which they are moving. You can write a method that helps you to calculate that distance. So methods are very good because they help you to modularize your code. You know, one of the ways you can organize your code, your program, is to create methods, and more so methods which are reusable. One of the good principles in software engineering is reusability. Reusability is where you create like a method, a block of code that can be used in other modules or in different modules. So it helps you to avoid like redundancy. You know, you find someone writes, I remember I was assessing some people's work, then you would find someone has written like 90 lines of code, and yet they could compress that and write it in 20 lines of code. You would find that, for example, they are trying to, you know, compute the average of marks scored by a student in tests, maybe coursework, midterm, and the final year exam the final examination for different subjects, maybe mathematics, chemistry, and maybe biology. And then you find this person is writing source code for each subject. You know, is trying to write an algorithm or source code for computing average, for math, for physics, for biology, and the source code resembles in nature. Then I ask them, why would you do this? Because literally what changes in the code snippets for the 3 subjects or assignments is basically the name of the test or the name of the subject. So what is the best way to go about it? The best way is you create a method. Create, for example, a method that takes in parameters, and for example, the parameters are to cater for the information that changes. For example, if you are trying to compute the average for the subject, what do? You know that what is going to change is the subject name. You know what is going to change are the marks scored in the tests. But if you have, for example, beginning of the term, mid-term, and end of term, the names of the tests do not change. What changes are the marks. So which means that you can, you know, write a method that takes in marks as parameters or as input to the method. Then the tests will remain constant. And of course, the way you compute average will not change, because you won't tell me that the way you compute average for mathematics is going to change from biology. Average is average. So you write a method that handles that. So a method is a block of code that is used to achieve a specific, perform a specific task. Now, when it comes to Java, we have two categories of methods. One is what we call instance methods and static methods. Okay. Now the instance methods are methods which belong to an object of a class. Instance methods are those that belong to the object of a class. Static methods are methods which belong to the entire class. Instance methods are methods which belong to the object of the class, while static methods are methods that belong to the entire class. Now, if you want to create an instance method, you create a method and then you call it through an object, because remember we are saying that instance methods belong to the instances or the objects of the class. So if you are to call an instance method, you call it through an object, while a static method you don't access it via an object of the class. You can access it via through a class directly. Now, there's what we call method. I'm just going to first break down these concepts for you, so that when you start coding and I start talking about method signature, method definition, then you have an idea. So there's what we call method signature, method body, okay, and sometimes method definition. Okay. Now, what defines method definition is you're basically looking at two things: the method signature and the body. You want to define a method, okay? So you're basically looking at the method signature and the method body. Now, the method signature, it means, or it is defined by the method name and the number, including the order of the of parameters to the method. Method signature refers to the method name, okay, method name, the data types or the types of parameters to the method, and the order of parameters to the method. Okay, so that is method signature. And then the method body, of course, is what is within the body of the method. What is entailed, or how is the body? You know, the body comes after the curly brackets. Okay. For example, I'm just going to give you an example. If I say int, now maybe before that, let's look at syntax for the method of defining a method. Syntax of defining a method. One is, I'm just going to write it in form of comments. Okay. So you write return type. Okay. The first is return type. Then method name. Okay. Then the parenthesis. Then inside the parenthesis you put parameters, okay? But remember, there are methods which have no parameters, okay? So parameters are optional. Inside you have parameters, but it's not a must, okay? There are methods which you do not have parameters. Then you put curly brackets, okay? Then what lies within these curly brackets, this is what we call the method body. What lies within is what we call method body, okay? So it is return type, method name, parameters, brackets, which are optional. Of course, the parameters are optional. Then the curly brackets. Then the curly brackets, inside the curly brackets, just like I've said, you put, that's where the method body goes, okay? You put the method body. Now, I'm going to show you an example. Assume you want to write a method that displays your name, okay? That just displays or prints your name. Now, where you're seeing return type, these are data types, of course, you know, int, float, double, string, etc. Void, okay? All those are return types. Method name, of course, that is obvious. The method name is basically the name of your method. So if I want to create a method, for example, that prints my name, okay, first of all, I need to ask myself what is the return type, because as we can see, the syntax of defining a method, you start with return type, then method name. Now, the return type, if it is just printing, we are not returning anything. We are just printing. If you're just printing, then we can use void, because void is the return type we use to indicate that the method returns nothing. Okay, if it does not return anything. For example, printing, when you print, you're not returning. Okay, so you just use void to indicate that in that case. So your method does not return anything. So you say return, you say void, which is the return type, the method name, which is print name, okay? Then you open the parenthesis, then you open the parenthesis, and then open the curly brackets, okay? We had created this, so I can remove this, okay? Or if you want, you can say even display name, okay? And method name, you can give it any other name. So as you can see, we have void, display name, the parenthesis, then the curly brackets. Now this function is first of all returning nothing, because as we can see, the return type is void. Then the name is display name. Now the parenthesis, remember, here is where we put in the parameters. So right now we don't have any parameter, meaning that it does not take in any what? It does not take in any parameters. And then here you have the curly brackets, and then here it should be method body. Method body is basically the body of your method, what is entailed in the body of the method. So here you can say system, maybe I just want to print or display my name, dot print line, and I say you can say Darlington, as singular as the name, okay? And then I terminate. So as you can see, it's just a method used to print my name, display name, Darlington, as singular. Return type is void, then display name. Now when you define a method, we have defined this method, okay, with the method signature as well as the method body. There's what we call a method call. Now when you define a method, it will not be executed until you call it a method call. So now I talked about two types of methods, instance methods and static methods. Now this method called display name is an instance method, in a sense that it belongs to an object of the class. For static methods, they are prefixed with the word static, and just like I said, static methods belong to the entire class. But this is an instance method, because instance methods are also called non-static methods. Okay, non-static methods. So this is a non-static method because it does not have the keyword static. The moment you prefix this with static, it means that this method belongs to the entire class. So this is, for example, once I put here static, it means that it's a static method and it belongs to the entire class. But this one, display name, is an instance method or non-static. So if you were to call it, allow me erase this since we looked at them last time. There's a YouTube video for that. You can check out our YouTube channel, PivotSoft Coding Academy. You'll be able to access the code. So now we've created the method called display name. Now we are going to call it, because we talked about the method call. When you create a method, you must call it. So method call. Okay. Now, how do we call a non-static method, or what we call an instance method? We said that we called it we called it through an object. Okay, we called it through what? An object. I was saying she's asleep. We called it through an object. Sorry, we called it through an object. So the first thing we need to do is to create an object. Okay, I think I didn't take you through creating objects, but I can talk about it now, since we are going to use it. How do you create an object? Creating an object is, we call it instantiation. Okay, we call it instantiation. Instantiation is a process of creating objects of a class. Creating objects of a class. Okay. Now, what do we use? We use a constructor to create an object. Guys, I want you to follow to follow along. You listen to every point, almost everything that I say. Particularly for those ones who are coding for the very first time in OOP. You might hear these words for the first time, so you need to make sure you follow up. You listen very well. Right now I'm talking about instantiation because I need it to call that non-static method display name. So that's why I'm taking time to talk about it. So instantiation, just like I've said, it's a process of creating objects of a class, and we use a constructor. Now, right now I will not be able to tell you what a constructor is. I'm just going to highlight. A constructor is basically a method with the same name as a class. For example, you can see that our class name is teacher, meaning that the constructor name is also called what? Is also called teacher, because it's a method. So if a class, if you don't have any constructor in the class, by default it is there even though you're not seeing it. Okay, so so I expect that I have a constructor called teacher like this. Remember, it's a method with the same name as a class, so it's here. You see, now I have put it, but even before putting it, it was there. A default one is always there. Okay, so that's a constructor. Now we create objects using this constructor. Now, how do we create an object? You put the class name. Let me put the syntax here. Syntax of creating an object. So it is class name, object name, then equals new class name. But you see, after new, when you say equals the new class name, now here is a constructor, this one. You see this, where I say equals the new class name brackets. Now let me show you how, for example, do we create if our class is called teacher, how do we create the object? We shall say teacher by following this syntax. Class name shall say teacher, maybe the object name is tr equals new, the class name is teacher. Okay, you can see it now. This is the object name. Now I just want to show you that once you say new, then the teacher, this teacher is the constructor. Remember, constructor is a method with the same name as the class. Let's try to change the method signature, the constructor signature, and we see what happens. Remember, the constructor is here, so assume here we say this, a teacher has name, of course, as one of the attributes, and then in a constructor we say t name. Okay, t name, and then here we say this dot name equals t name. Okay, now I'm just using a constructor to initialize a teacher's name. Okay, now if you look at this constructor, now remember, a constructor is basically here, this one, line 8, teacher bracket string t name. Now we've changed the constructor because right now it's taking in a string t name. It's not empty just like it was before. Now if we go down, you are going to see an error. You see this? You see an error here. Why? Because this is a constructor. When we say new teacher, we are creating this object tr using a constructor, but our constructor that we have in this class is taking in t name as a parameter, so it's not empty. So that's why here it's showing an error. But let's say, because now it takes in a string t name, if I pass like an argument, let's say Darlington, the error will go. The error will go. Why? Because this constructor for this class teacher is taking in a parameter called t name. Okay, t name. Assume I pass, let's say, through this constructor, I say I also take in the age of the lecturer or the teacher. Okay, if I come down, you see that there is an error. Why? Because this we remember we are creating an object teacher tr is the object, and you're using the constructor of the class. But the constructor of the class now is taking in two arguments, it's also taking in age. But when you look at here, when you look at this point where you are creating the object, we're only passing what? A name. Okay, so if I pass like 60, the error goes. Why? The constructor is expecting two arguments. You can see it has two parameters here, so here I have passed 2. When I pass this one as a string, maybe 90, we expect an error as well. There are two arguments, just like they are here, name and age. But the problem is that the constructor is expecting two parameters. The first one is a string, the first one is an integer. A string first, here is an integer, but here I'm passing a string and a string, which makes it wrong. Okay, but if I make it a number, it will be correct. Anyway, we shall look at constructors later. I just wanted to highlight this. So if I remove this now, and I remove this, you see we don't have any error because the constructor is here. Even if you remove it, I told you that there is always a default constructor which takes in no parameters. So in this case, since we have the object name which is tr, we can call the members of the class, particularly the non-static, using the object name. Okay, so for example, display name is non-static. It is an instance method, so I can call it through the object that I've created. So I will come here and say tr dot. So you can see when I say tr dot, you can say that one of the methods I have is display name. Okay, so here I've called this method that we've written here display name. So when we run, or when I run, where do I restore from? Okay, just hold on. Okay, you can see that the name is here, Darlington what? Asingwire. Now when you comment out this, we've commented out line 41 where we're doing a method call, then we don't expect any what? Any value, because we are not calling that method. Okay, you see I have commented it out, meaning that I'm not calling this method. So that's why when I run, you see nothing on the terminal. Okay, but when I uncomment and run again, that's when you see Darlington Asingwire. So this is what we call method call. Method call. So we are calling our method called display name through the object that we've created. Are we together there? Any questions for now? If everything is going well, gives up a thumbs up so that I you know I'm teaching things and people understanding. Good. Now we can proceed. Now this is a non-static, I can say, or what you can call instance method. Now this method takes in 0 parameters, okay, because you can see the parenthesis is empty. Now let's look at a method that takes in a parameter, still looking at instance. So we can say void print my age, okay, or print age. We can just say print age, but we want this method now to take in a parameter. Okay, now a parameter we can say int age. Okay, int age. So int age is the parameter to the method. You notice the difference between these two methods. This one is display name, this one is print age. Display name has an empty parenthesis. Print age takes in one parameter, which is age, which is int age. Of course, you don't. I see some of you normally make mistakes and you say age. No, you don't just say age. You have to state the type of the parameter. You have to prefix. You have to put first the data type of the parameter. So in this case, age is integer. Okay. So here I can say system.out. Still we are using void as the return type. Print line, and then we say I am plus age. We concatenate, then years old. Okay, meaning that whatever age we pass here is what will be the mess. It will be print concatenated within this string. Okay, if you call this method print age and you pass 30, then we will say I am 30 years old. So in this case, age is being passed as a parameter. Let's code it. So to code it, it's non-static. Okay, you can see void. We don't have any static keyword, meaning it's an instance method. So we code it through the object name as well. Say tr dot print age. But you see, when you do this, you see it shows you an error. You've called it print age by showing you an error. Why? It's because you've not passed any argument. This is an empty parenthesis. But yet print age takes in one parameter called age. Now let me echo on this. Listen to this very well. When you are defining a method, the variables that you pass to the method, like here we are defining print age. The variables that you pass, for example, age, we call them parameters. But when you are making a method call, for example, here we are calling print age, the values you pass to this method are called arguments. So parameters are variables that you pass when you're defining, while arguments are values that you pass when you are calling the method. I hope that is very clear. Okay, when you're defining a method like here, the variables you pass like age are parameters, but when you're calling the method, for example, we are calling print age, the values that you pass are called arguments. So I'm saying that in this case it is showing an error because while we are defining the method, we are saying that it takes in one parameter, which is age, meaning that when we are calling it, we must pass an argument which must be an integer and its age. So meaning here I can pass maybe 38. Okay, so you can see the error is no more. So at this point we've called print age. So if we print, we should be able to see I am 38 years old. Okay, I am 38 years old. So that's Now the first one is an instance method without parameters. Okay, the second one is instance method with parameters. Okay, now next we've been looking at methods with void. What if it is a method that does not return that returns something? It's not void. Let's say it's int. Okay, so instance method with a return type, with a return type besides void. Okay, so I can say int, maybe calculate area. Okay, and then we say int length, comma int width. Okay, okay, int length, comma int width. So here we have our method called calculate area. The return type is int. Okay, it takes into parameters length and width, and both of them are of data type int. So do you know why it is showing an error here? Because this method called calculate area, the return type is int, but we are saying inside the method body it is not returning anything. So that's why you're seeing that error. So how do we get rid of the error? We must make sure that this method returns. Okay, so we can say int area equals length times width. Okay, then we say return area. You can see the error is gone. Okay, int calculate area, int length, int width, then the method body we must return. If you say int area minus return, it will still show you an error, because even when you've calculated the area, you've not returned the area. So if you say return area, area will be the product. Of course, when you get length times width, both are integer. If you get integer times integer, you return an integer. So, but I don't like this. So this you can summarize it like this. You say return length times width is the same thing. The first one I did is I needed to make sure you guys understand. So, but it is, you can simplify it as return length times width. So yeah, it is a simple method for calculating an area of any rectangle, where it takes in length, width, and then it returns length times the width, which is the area of the rectangle. So we are going to call this method called calculate area. Now, the first thing we need, we can say tr.calculate area. Okay, you can say length 10, 5 as width. Okay, now if you print this, you will not see anything. You still have the old, information. Why? Is because calculate area just returns the product of length and width. Okay, it does not print. So if you want to print area, you can do this. You can say system.out.println, then you say area is, and then you concatenate your method call here. You say plus that. Okay, so if we print, then we should be able to see the area. Area is 50. Area is 50. We are saying tr.calculate area, we have 10, then we have 5. So as simple as that. Now if you want, you can make your program more dynamic. Instead of hard coding these values, you can get them from the keyboard. Of course we use the scanner class. So how do we get the scanner class? From, I believe you know the package java.util .scanner. Okay, so this scanner class helps us to get the input from keyboard. So we shall say we create an object for scanner class. Maybe we say input equals new scanner class, then bracket system dot in. So here I'm just creating an object that will help us in getting input from the keyboard. So the first thing is to ask the user to enter length. So enter the length of the rectangle. Okay, so the first thing I need to do is declare my variables, which is length and width. Then I will capture length, so I will say length equals, you use the input. For people who attended JDBC, you know how to use the scanner class. We looked at that. Input dot next int. If you want to get an integer, use next int. So I will copy this and paste it down, and in this case I will say enter width of the rectangle. Then here I say width. Yeah, so in this case I change it to width, meaning that at this point I will have length and width, because I'm telling the user to enter length of the rectangle. So I'm saying length dot input dot next int. Then I'm also capturing width, which is width equals input dot next int, meaning that here I will have to put length, which are my variables that I've captured, and then width. Okay, then all I have, it's good to is to cross the scanner object, in this case, which is the input. This is not a must call it input. You can call it S. It's just an object of the scanner class. So here I can be more specific. Area of the rectangle. Then I can put the dimensions inside here. I can concatenate. Now what I'm doing is just to make my program better, look good. Width. So what I've done is I've created the object for the scanner class, and then I'm capturing length and width. Then I am printing the area of the rectangle. What I want is to make sure I say area of the rectangle, brackets, they will put the dimensions. Then we are using the method which is tr.calculate area, where we are passing length and width. Remember, calculate area is here, which is our method, and remember it's here, calculate area, where we pass length and width, which will return the product of the two parameters. So now when I run, they ask me enter the length of the rectangle. When I put 6, ask me to enter width. When I put 3, you can see that area of the rectangle, bracket 6 3, is 18. Okay, so in this case we have calculated the area of the rectangle using a method. So yeah, next is, maybe let me now create a static method. Okay, now that you know, create a static method. A static method belongs to the entire class, so all you have to do is use the static keyword. The rest of the methods that we've been looking at, these 3 are non-static or are instance. So you say static, maybe float, calculate, you can see even get area of a circle, right? Get area of a circle, and maybe it takes in radius. Okay, so now if you look at this, my method is supposed to calculate area of a what? Of a circle. Now static, I'm using the word static because I want to make it a static method. I want the method to belong to the entire class. Then float is the return type of the method. Get area of a circle is the method name, and it takes in one parameter, which is radius. If you want, you can put radius here. Then how do we get area of a circle? 3.14 times radius times radius. Okay, then you terminate. Okay, so if we want, we can cast this to double. They are saying that change method return type to void. If you get this time with this, the result is double, so we can change this one to double to get rid of the conflict, because when you get 3.14 times radius, result is double, so you can use double. Double also caters for both float and int, so better that way. Now to code this, if you come here and say get, okay, area, because our method is here, it's non-static, but remember it takes in radius, which is maybe 4.5. okay, now this is showing, if this is showing, for example, it's showing you an error because okay, let's first make sure you can pass like 4. The first thing, as you can see, is that we've passed an argument which is 4, which reflects you can also call it 4.0, so that we, okay, if we say 4, anyway, we can try to get rid of these conflicts. If you say double and then you say maybe 8, that's still okay. Now when you say get area of a circle and you pass an argument like 8, you see we are able to call this method. The most important thing that I want you to notice is here, we have these two methods, print area and get area of a circle. Now get area of a circle, we are able to call it directly. We are not using the object to call it, but print edge, we are using the object name, and if we remove this, you will get an error on print what? On print edge. But for get area of a circle, we are able to call it directly. Why? It is because print edge is non-static, or is an instance method, and so you must call it through the object of the class. But get area of the circle, because it is static method, it belongs to an entire class, you don't have to code it through an object of the what? Of the class. So that's what I wanted to show you. As you can see, the moment you move this tr on print edge, you will get an error. Why? Because print edge is non-static. For any for instance method or non-static method to be called, you must code it through the object of the class. But for a static method, you don't have to use the object of the what? Of the class. So we can print this one here. I'll say area of the circle is, then we do a plus here, we add this. Just hold on, just give me a minute. Hello? Okay, so that's it. Sorry, I had received a call. We can proceed. So let me just summarize this. So yeah, so you can see system.out.println area of the circle is get area of the circle, and I pass 8. Okay, so you can see I'm calling get area minus using the object of the class, because get area of the circle is a static method. So when I print, you can see that area of the circle is 200.96. okay, yeah, so I believe if you use our calculator here, then we must have the what is it called, that value, 8 times 8, that is 64. If I get 64 times 3.14, you can see it is 200.96. yes. So I have shown you how to also create a static method and how to